Okay, we're gonna go ahead and start our winter landscapes. Now, before we even get to the paint, we do have to draw out two different guidelines, okay? And those guidelines are really gonna help us with painting. So the first thing you wanna think about is where your ground is gonna be. You can make it straight, you can add like a little bump, however you want your ground to be, just kind of draw a guideline for it. Now that can easily change. Okay, but that's just to start us off. The second thing I want to think about is where I'm going to be putting my moon. Okay, so you can have your moon all the way in the corner, you can have it right in the middle, but I'm just going to mark with like a little circle, little dot, where my moon is going to be when I start painting. Now you'll notice on my paint palette, I have one base color, a color from the color wheel, a white and a black pile of paint, okay? Now we are mostly gonna be using our base color from the color wheel and white for this part of the project. And that's gonna be for the sky. So the sky is going to be everything above that bottom line that you drew. And we're gonna be creating values of your color, which means lights and darks. So the darker you make a color, it's called a shade when you mix it with black. And when you mix it with white and it makes it lighter, it's called a tint. Now I'm gonna start out with my darkest shade of purple. And that's gonna be the farthest away from that center dot, because that dot, remember, it's gonna be the moon. So we wanna make our outside really dark. So what you're gonna do is take your base color, and I'm actually gonna scoop it into one of my sections, okay? And I'm gonna mix just a little black with it. Okay, I'm gonna scoop a little black and just kind of mix that together. That's gonna be my absolute darkest section, farthest from my dot. So I'm gonna go ahead and start to make this circular shape. And again, that's where my ground is. So I'm just tracing over that. I'm making this circular shape around that dot. So maybe I'll have it kind of go up here. Maybe I'll have a little bit over here. And I don't think I'm gonna see any there. So I'll go ahead and just kind of add in any of the darkest parts of my sky. And you're gonna go around neatly, really getting those edges nice and clean. Okay, now you have a choice for your sky. You can either have your sections really clear so that it looks like there's different layers, or you can kind of blend them together. Okay, so I went ahead and I finished my final circular shape for my darkest shade of purple. And again, that is a shade of purple because I mixed black with it. Now I'm gonna get a little lighter. So if I get a little lighter, I'm just gonna take purple, and maybe for this one, I'm actually not even gonna mix black or white with it because I just want that deep purple. And I'm gonna make my next layer, and you're gonna see how already it looks lighter than when I mixed it with the black. So you're gonna go ahead and just create your second layer of your second purple that's a little lighter, or whatever color you chose. Okay, so I just did my next layer, and I didn't mix any white or any black with this, just so it was a little lighter than my darker purple. Now, I don't even have to wash my brush off because again, I still want purple on my brush. The only thing is I'm gonna go to a new section. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna scoop some purple. And because I want it to be lighter, I'm gonna scoop just a little white. I don't want it too light because I still have all those tints to add toward my center. So I'm gonna mix it in with my purple. Now I think I need a little more white because I can't even really see a difference there. Mix it in, and now I think that I'm ready for my next section, okay? Because it's a little lighter. I actually might take a little more purple so it's not so light, because I do want it to just be a little bit lighter, not too much lighter. And I think I'm happy with that value. Now I'm going to go ahead and again, make my next circular shape. If it overlaps with this one, that's fine. That's just going to blend it a little more if you do that against the edge. If you want it to be very clean cut, then you just won't touch that one at all and you'll make a new section. I'm kind of doing a little bit of both. So a little bit is overlapping on the edge, but it's mostly by section. Again, that's your artistic choice and you make that decision. So I'll go ahead and again, just start painting. And always if you need to rotate your paper so it's easier to reach, of course you can do that too. Now you're gonna notice that I started to bring my circle around to that corner. So now because it's creating that circular shape, I am going to paint up in the corner when it's ready to do that, okay? So obviously my first two layers, it was cropped, right? I didn't see it yet. Now that I'm at this section, you're gonna start to see that color come in a little more. So now I'm just gonna repeat those steps. Another little bit of advice, after you do each section, I would kind of like stand up and look at it from far away. That way you can see if you need to alter anything. Like maybe you need to bring a little more paint over here, you know, just to finish that circle shape, to make it a little more rounded. Okay, maybe you want to add a little paint somewhere else. So look at it before you go to the next section. Now you have an option. You don't have to create a new section, right? Because we already have some left over from before. So all you need to do is scoop a little bit of white into the section you had before. And you're gonna guarantee that that's gonna get a little lighter, right? So that is a little lighter than what I just used. And again, if you need to add a little more purple to make it a little darker, then you can do that as well. And adjust it until you're happy with the shade being a little lighter than the previous one. Now, as you start to move toward the center, you're obviously gonna it's gonna get a little easier just because you're working in a smaller space. But don't forget, you do not have to make it a perfect circle, okay? This is just to guide you. It's a circular shape. Okay, it does not have to be perfect. So now I'm gonna go to my next one. I already have that color made from before. I'm gonna mix a little more white in until it's a little bit lighter. Again, I'm never washing my brush. I'm just mixing what I have. There's no need to wash it to water it down because I'm really using the same colors. I have a color that's a little lighter and I'm gonna repeat that step. So I finished all of my different values and I'm up to my last one, which is the moon. Now, if you want to make it very white, you can kind of just wipe off any extra paint from your brush, but you do want to keep a little bit of your color on there. So just kind of wipe it off and then take only white. Okay, and then when you paint, it's going to be white, but with a very light tint of your color. Okay, so I would do that first. See if you like it, and if you need to add a little more white to it, then obviously you can. Okay, maybe I want to make it like a tiny bit more white, so I'm going to take a little bit more white, and I'll just kind of add a little bit of a highlight to that until you're happy with how light it is. Now the next part of the project is going to be creating whatever you want on the ground, like trees or a fence or anything like that. Just think about perspective. The bigger and taller we draw something, like I'll use a tree for an example, the taller we draw a tree, the closer it's gonna look. The smaller we draw a tree and shorter we draw a tree, the farther it's going to look. So think about that as you're designing your trees. You can also draw a tree with branches. You could draw more of a pine tree look. Again, your choice, you're the artist. Same thing with things like fences. If you want to make a fence going along the edge of your snow, you can feel free to do that. Really anything you want. Think about the design and think about the size. So I actually decided to extend my tree. I wanted it to look really, really close. And I was thinking about doing a second tree here, but I think I'm gonna leave it blank because I wanna see more of that purple as well. So I think I'm happy with this. Now you're gonna notice you can kind of see through the tree a little bit because the paint we're using, it's tempera paint. It's a little bit thinner. So we're gonna let our first layer dry and then we're literally gonna go back with another layer of black and you're gonna see how much thicker and darker that black is going to be, and it's going to create a really nice silhouette for our pictures. Now I'm sure you can see how much better that looks with a second layer. It creates just more of a shadow effect where it's really solid and it doesn't look like you can see through your images. So I'm gonna go ahead and let this dry and then I'm gonna add in my final step, which is going to be the snow. Now the very last step of the project is adding the snow. Now even though you have white paper, when you add white paint, it's gonna make it look a little more 3D, like it's actually there, instead of just a project that's not finished. So I'm gonna go ahead and start adding some of that snow. Now, if you wanna choose to add a little more dimension to it, you can add a little bit of your color. Like if I did purple, I could add a little more purple, and that's gonna give it a little more than just that really stark white. So I finished putting my snow on the ground and I even added a little bit of a shadow by mixing a little bit of purple into the white, and that's gonna make it look like the tree is a little more realistic. The last thing I'm gonna do, since it is a winter scene, and you can do this or not, it's totally up to you, you can add snowflakes. So there's two ways you can do this. First, you can dip the back of your brush into white and literally make little dots. And you could go around your paper and kind of add dots of snow to your background. The other thing you can do is take some paint on your brush, the actual brush part, and you can flick. Do like a little bit of a flick, and it's gonna give that little splatter effect. Okay, and you can do that as much or as little as you want. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish that part. Okay, so I finished everything that I wanted to put. Now again, if you flick it like this, or if you tap it like this, it is gonna splatter a little bit, okay? It's gonna give it that splatter effect. You could see I kind of got it a little bit on my hands. It might get on your clothes a little too. It is washable, okay, because we are using tempera paint, so that's fine. But if you don't want to get messy at all, then I would really suggest just doing that method of putting it on the back of your brush, and that's going to keep it really like a lot cleaner. Okay, so see what you come up with, and let's create these beautiful winter scenes.